Today, we're going to be talking a lot about in-season evaluations. I know we do host that annual webinar with the JVA on tryouts, but today we'll focus on a little bit of a different topic, in-season evaluations, and slightly mentioning combines, which seem to be a growing trend across volleyball. Just helps to get players quantitative metrics and compare themselves to others in different regions. There's a lot of exciting things we can talk about on that side of things. For those who are joining, if you want to drop in the chat where you're joining from, what club you're with, any questions you have for panelists or other directors or coaches who are joining the webinar, we'd love to see all of those in the chat here. We'll wait just a minute for everybody to get in here. Fun to see some familiar names in the attendee list for this as well. Always appreciate having different TeamGenius users as well as some new faces, new names on that list too. So thanks for taking some time to spend with us here today. Awesome. We got Leonard from the UK. That's a
Wow.
long ways across the across the pond. That's awesome. Yeah, we're joining at least Zach, Gabe Skelly, and I are joining from cold Minnesota. Uh, We've got, I think, below zero weather this week throughout. So that's not the most fun, but it's that time of year. And we do have snow, which makes it feel more like we have the holidays coming up. So that's exciting times.
We've reached
I'll go.
coat weather in Atlanta, so I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to put my coat on and be quiet because it's nowhere near below zero over here.
Yeah. What is coat weather for you all, Brianna?
Me, it's anything 60 or below. The hoodie's just not
Yeah.
going to cut it anymore. But once
Yep.
we reach February, I might change my mind. But when it first starts to
hmm
get cold, yeah, I'm putting the coat on below 60.
Yep. It's a different kind of cold in the south too. Like 60 is much colder down there than it is here in Minnesota. 60, we still have people out on the lakes. So much
Oh,
different.
yes,
Well,
it is.
great. We'll go ahead and dive in. So just looking at the agenda for today, we are going to start with introductions, just talking a little bit about what Team Genius and the JVA do. We'll also then dive into in-season evaluations, why you should consider running in-season evaluations for your players, maybe how you can do that efficiently and effective. And we'll show a short demo of how Team Genius works in case people are curious. We'll then talk about how you can use that evaluation data you get after your in-season evaluations. We'll talk about some trends and innovations, just things that people are doing to be more effective in developing athletes throughout the season. And we'll sort of end with a quick discussion on combines and camps and that big trend that we are seeing in the volleyball market this year, especially. And at the end, we'll open up for question and answer. So if you do have questions throughout, please do drop those into the chat and we'll get to those at the end. And as always, we will record this so we can send it out to you afterwards. We'll also plan to send out the slide deck. We're going to launch a poll now. Feel free to answer this whenever you have time. Just with some questions around in-season evaluations, camps, combines, what you know about Team Genius and the JVA, all that good stuff. So feel free to watch for that. And my recommendation is answer it when you feel like there's maybe a slide that isn't as engaging for you, or you can wait till the end, but we'll go through those results towards the end as well. Quick introduction to myself. I'm Gabe Malinsky. I'm our sales manager here at Team Genius. I've worked with the company for just over 7 years now, and I don't actually have the background in volleyball, but I've worked with hundreds of volleyball clubs over the years to help run more efficient and effective tryouts and in-season evaluations. I come from a hockey family, and yeah, it's been really just exciting to be in the sports world. I've always lived here in Minnesota, and excited to provide some insights for you all on what we're seeing people do in season nowadays. I'll pass it over to Gabe Skelly.
Yeah, Gabe here from Team Genius. The other Gabe. I've been here for about 8 years. Customer success. People need help with onboarding or need help with anything while they're running tryouts or evaluations. I do those things. Set up customers. Also going to be a lot of trade shows coming up here. And I just work with kind of all sports. A lot of experience with volleyball across the U.S. and Canada. Everything from small clubs that run um, say 50 kids through their programs to governing bodies that have 10,000 that do, provincial programs or things across the US. So a lot of experience in different breadth of sport and volleyball specifically, although I work with other sports and I just love helping support clubs and helping players get better at the sports they do. So, and we've got our amazing partner from the JVA here, so I'll let her introduce herself and say a little bit, but always great to work with the JVA. They do amazing stuff. So
Awesome. Thanks, Gabes. I'm Brianna Schenzel, Director of Marketing or I'm sorry, former Director of Marketing, Partner Development, and focusing on education as well, which I'm super excited about today's webinar. And, JVA's focus is helping our members facilitate their club operations, coach development, athlete development, and with our sport growing immensely, we are seeing an influx of athletes across all of our members, just trying to manage all of their day-to-day tasks. And today's topic is super important because clubs are heading into or have already started training. So yeah, I'm just really excited to be a part of today's discussion and continue to help our members make sure they're getting all the education that they need. So.
we've got, as part of Team Genius coming on here, just a little bit of intro slide here about, who we are and what we do if people are, new to us or coming on from a JVA partner, email that went out or something like that. We're a digital evaluation tool. We're tryouts first. We started actually the company 12 plus years ago. Todd Larson is a side project, and that scaled up and scaled up and scaled up to what we are today. We help you guys run digital evaluations where you don't have to use paper and pencil. Everything can auto save for your coaches if they're evaluating players. We help run faster tryouts and evaluations so they're transparent, and players can get feedback quickly from coaches and people that evaluate them. As you see here, we've got 120,000 plus athletes evaluated on a regular basis, and I think over 3 million scores collected just this year. So there's a lot of data comes through our system. And as we get into a data heavy world, you get all that data, you can do whatever you want with. You can plug it into your chat bot of choice, or you can look at evaluations across the different players you've had this year or last year. Kind of amazing stuff. So we help you guys with really running the evaluations, collecting that data, and then some ideas on what to do with it once you collect it.
Awesome. Brianna, you want to give us a little bit more information on what the JVA does?
Yeah, we've been partners with Team Genius for several years now, and we know that a lot of our clubs have benefited from utilizing the evaluation tools and software provided by Team Genius. And that's essentially, JV's goal is to provide all the tools and resources to help club directors, program leads, all the administrators and staff run the club operations day to day. And our goal really is just to better the ball, right? We want to help you better your club, ultimately better your coaches, which betters your athletes. And one thing that we're, consistently hearing on discussions on our calls with club directors and administrators is, how are you retaining your players? How are you providing open, honest feedback? How are you training your coaches to do this and be consistent with your club's culture? And one of those is providing feedback, right, in season, giving the players the feedback that they need and to understand, playing time decisions and all of those things that fall on the plates of these club leaders and coaches. So yeah, again, I'm excited about today's webinar and then just also continuing to provide this kind of education, putting it in the inboxes or virtual calls or in person coming up at AVCA convention in the hands of everybody who needs it. So yeah, reach out, jvavolleyball.org. We're kind of a one-stop shop for club directors, club administrators, staff, and coaches to help you better the ball.
Awesome. Well, I think one place where we can start is just why, and Skelly, maybe you want to start by telling us why should people consider running in-season evaluations and maybe just share a little bit. What does that even mean? I think that means a lot of different things to a lot of different clubs.
Yeah, so starting off, being here quite a while, working with clubs all over the states, in-season evaluations weren't as big of a thing, even 5 years ago. And we started hearing more and more that, especially ODP programs across different sports, volleyball programs, Olympic development programs wanted to start doing more feedback, but also just clubs trying to compete with other clubs. We've had some, depending on what kind of club you are, sometimes one of the challenges is, having that feedback to share with parents or um, showing internally what coaches and from previous years have worked with players on and what things they can do to develop and get better at the sports. And so we started launching it. How do we do this? How do we help clubs share better feedback and collect, feedback multiple times a year to share with either the players or keep it internally? Some of those challenges we hit as we were starting to look at this is, coaches don't have enough time. They're busy with planning practices. And one of the things that we've added in to help with that is some AI tools to help with coaches, adding in comments that are relative to the sport and the player's level. And we have some comment snippets, which I think Malinsky will show in later. But that's where you can give prescriptive feedback to players based on how you score them. And you can have like a paragraph or something preset that you can share with players and families on, how they're doing on a specific skill set relating to volleyball. Sometimes people think athletes aren't competitive enough or too young, and there's no standard process as we look at getting in-season evaluations set up for organizations. What I'd say too with that is, some of the younger kids that can be, if they're just getting started in the sport, a little bit of feedback goes a long way, and especially with parents. Like they want to get their kid in young into starting volleyball because they enjoy it and it's a fun thing. And like just a little bit of feedback, maybe geared towards the parents of the younger kids. Like, what can I do to help get my kids more into the sport? Like, what do they need? Do they need any kind of gear? They need, a little bit of me running around with them outside more, a little bit of ball practice, or, whatever it is. That feedback goes a long ways, even if they're young athletes. I have some organizations that work with kids, under third grade, like really, really young. It's kind of developmental programs. But really in developing to those kids, you think about how do you develop somebody without sharing feedback? So that's where the in-season evaluations can really help, is sharing that feedback maybe once a month, maybe once every 3 months, depending upon how long your season is, or when you're working with the kids, just sharing that feedback and showing how they're growing and progressing, or maybe the things they need to improve on. Going along with that, the benefits, you can get comprehensive player insights, so you can see how they're developing over the year. You can see year over year development as kids might transfer from coach to coach as they level up or age up. You can share some of that feedback if you're doing in-season evaluations. You can track their progress over time in those yearly reports. You can improve the coach to athlete communication. So imagine you're sharing a report with a kid. You may send it to them via email, just like your kids' school send evaluations or report cards. Well, you should get those from your sports you're involved in too. And the coach can sit down, just like you have a parent teacher conference. You can have a parent coach conference or parent kid coach conference where you go over those things. So like, what are you doing to improve? How can your parents help support that? How can we as coaches help support that in our program? Also, you can plan ahead for next season. So if you have things to improve on, you can work on, out of season or the kind of captain's practice timing things. If there's certain things that are prescribed to you by the organization, you can do certain drills and skills to work on your own. And then also really, it can help increase your club reputation and player retention. If a club's giving feedback and the kids are, tighter with their coaches and with their teams, it helps you keep them at your club. It also helps clubs level up. So imagine if you're a club that doesn't give any feedback, you don't give any reports, and you're able to come in with a custom report that's branded with your club details, with really nice feedback and kind of looking like an old school, like, volleyball card or baseball card of the kid that they keep and print out. Maybe they can put up on their bedroom wall with how amazing they're doing, can really help with player retention and just kind of leveling up your organization. So there's a lot to giving that feedback, and for me, as a parent of 4 kids, like I always want feedback from coaches, and I don't ever get enough. I feel like if they need new shoes or they need some kind of athletic gear or something to wear, or they need some kind of, post or preseason, equipment or training they need to do, or nutrition, any of these kind of things. Like feedback, I think goes a long ways. And I think we're always, from the coaching side, trying to give more, but as parents always wanting more too. So.
Yeah, it's something that not every club is doing currently, but I think the number of clubs that are doing in-season evaluation just continues to grow. And COVID was a huge starting point for a lot of those clubs because people couldn't do tryouts, so that nobody knew where they did fall on the spectrum of talent within the club. And so starting to communicate at that point and just continuing on from there has been really fun to see, and we're happy to be a part of that. So, the next slide here is just how to make in-season evaluations quick, easy, and effective, right? This is not a super simple thing to do. Some organizations in the past we've seen create a PDF that they send out to their coaches, and the coaches fill out all of the notes within the sheet that they're sent. And I think that's a great place to start. Unfortunately, what happens most of the time with those PDFs is you print them off, you write down your notes, the coach gives the sheet to the athlete, and then the athlete never gives that to the parent. The parent never actually gets that report. It sits in their bag all year, ends up in the trash, or it just gets lost somewhere along the way. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of people start to use a digital solution. So the other option, of course, is to have a Google Doc or something that you send to the coaches. They fill out the document, they email it to the players. But of course, that's a one-to-one process too, which is not very simple. So that's where Team Genius can really step in. But for anybody, Team Genius users or not, here's the steps that you need to complete, really simplified, in order to complete an in-season evaluation. First step, you want to figure out what criteria the coaches should score the players on. Of course, the criteria being something like hitting. I know we have a list that we'll go through at the end here with the most common criteria: serving, passing, attacking. A lot of times in season evaluations, coaches will actually get into the intangibles because those are not things you can really see at a tryout. You can't see attitude and leadership and coachability, those intangibles at a tryout, typically because you're focused on dozens and dozens of players, not just the 10, 15, 20 players that are on your team and that you're responsible for. So setting up your criteria is always the first step. What do you want to get out of this evaluation? How do you want to give feedback to the athletes, and what do you want the coaches to focus on giving notes on? Another part of that is the scale that the coaches are using. Do you want them scoring like a report card, A, B, C, D, F? Do you want to score on a scale of 0 to 5 with half point increments? Do you prefer to score on something like a scale similar to excellent, above average, average, below average, something more similar to that? All of those things you can do within Team Genius, but regardless of if you use Team Genius or not, that's your first step, is set up your criteria. Next, you're going to need to create your team lists that you're either going to email to coaches or print off and give to your coaches so that they know who they're in charge of evaluating and they can make sure they don't forget anybody. In Team Genius or a different software, that's typically a CSV file that you're importing into the system. And then the teams will be assigned to the coaches. Coaches can easily go into a mobile app or onto the computer and evaluate the players. So those are done very differently for different processes. Then once you have those lists together, the criteria figured out, you got to invite your coaches somehow and ultimately collect scores after you invite them. One of the tricky parts there is getting the coaches to complete the evaluation. That's one of the hardest parts that people do encounter when trying to run in-season evaluations, especially the first time. The coaches are like, "What are we doing here? Why is this important?" And you can literally just take one of these slides and write out an email telling them why it's important if you prefer to do it that way. So we're happy to help with some of that stuff as well. But collecting scores and notes from the coaches, ultimately, you want to make sure that you have an efficient process for that. And then compiling the data if you do have head coaches, assistant coaches, multiple coaches scoring all of their athletes. You want some sort of process to compile that data in a way that is going to be easy for the athletes to understand who's giving each comment or who gave each score. And at the end of that process, of course, if you plan to share the data, you need an efficient way to do that. I'll dive into how Team Genius helps with that process. I'll keep it really high level today. If you do want a deeper dive and to talk more about your specific process, feel free to reach out to us and we can make that meeting happen. This is our back end of TeamGenius. There is the mobile app as well. If you feel like you want to try out the mobile app to see what the evaluation experience is like, you can download the TeamGenius app on your phone or tablet. It's on the iOS or Android store. It just asks for your name, email, and an access key. For that access key, use the access key VBALL, VBALL, and that will bring you into a sample assessment so you can score some sample players, just get an idea of what the evaluation process is like for coaches or evaluators at a tryout or in season. Uh, let's see. Well, first step really in TeamGenius is setup, right? You got to set up those things we talked about, scoring forms being what criteria you plan to score the players on. You also want to set up how many sessions or how many scores are you going to give the players throughout the year. A lot of people nowadays are doing beginning of season evaluations from the coaches, sort of allowing the coach to set expectations for what that player should be working on throughout the year. Mid-season evaluations to just have that checkpoint middle of the year so players do have a chance to improve before the end of the season, before playoffs, nationals, regionals, whatever it is, and end of season as well to just show that player, here's where you ended up. And it's great if you have those three together, beginning, middle, and end of season evaluations, so they can see how they improved and how the feedback from their coach changed. Maybe it was almost identical. That's probably a case where you want that player to be working a little bit harder, and it's good for you to have that data internally as well as to share that with the player so that they know that they do have things to work on before next year. We've all dealt with those times when a player thinks that they should be on the best team or they should be a starter, but they have things to work on. This is your way of communicating that so that next year their parents aren't upset about them not being in that starter position or not making that top team. So after setting up the criteria you want to score players on, after setting up the sessions, how many times you want the coaches to score the players, you're able to easily add players from a CSV file or from one of our registration partners. And you get a list of all players on this page. For tryouts, this is like the check-in page. But as soon as you do that import, all of your players, Alex, for example, are assigned to their team. Alex is assigned to the U10 team. Once you do import the players and you have set up your criteria as well as your sessions, you're able to go in here and you can assign coaches. We'll skip that step right now just for sake of time, but you're able to assign coaches to the mid-season evaluation. Click here, and that's going to send an email invitation to all of those coaches. They'll get an email that says, you've been assigned an evaluation. Click here to get started. They click on that link, and it brings them in to this web page. Mid-season it would bring them into. They'd see just their team, just U10. They'd start scoring, and you can grab and scroll to score. So you have your player list. This is your team on the left side. Let's go to Peyton. For serve receive, you can grab and scroll to score. You can generate a comment using AI or type in your own comment. So we have flexibility there. Defense, we'll say needs improvements. Work on XYZ before end of season, right? So pretty simple and straightforward there. That AI tool sometimes takes a bit of time. Of course, it's trying to look at this criteria and judge based on that score what comment it should generate. So let's go back in here and we'll see if that works this time. The great part about as the coaches are doing this in season, I know I mentioned one of the struggles is getting the coaches to actually do the in-season evaluation. One of the benefits is you're able to track their progress within TeamGenius as they go. So if we go to this assignment status page, as the evaluators complete their evaluation, you'll see this progress bar go up from 0% eventually when they're finished to 100%. Then for those who are falling behind or have not started yet, you can go back to assign coaches and invite those coaches individually to that uh, to that evaluation. So that's a huge benefit. We also see some organizations that will actually withhold a like the final paycheck before they, so basically you don't send the final paycheck to that coach until their end of season evaluation is complete. So that's something, if you want to incentivize the coaches, maybe it's just a $20 gift card if they're volunteer coaches. Maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's just, hey, we're not going to close out this season until you get this done. We really need this. This is important for the club. So as all of that data is being collected in the mobile app or on that web page I was showing, you're going to get a dashboard that looks like this, where you can filter by one of your teams. You can click on mid-season. Let's maybe go to this U12. Mid-season, Drew was your best player. Beginning of season, Kai was. End of season, Morgan was. And at the end of the season, based on all of those compiled, you have Logan as your best overall U12 player of the year. So it's really nice to be able to see all of that on one dashboard. What this is really helpful for is next year when you do have players trying out, you're able to go back and reference, hey, these, let's say Logan and Quinn ended up with the same score after tryouts. How do we want to place them? Well, then go back to end of season evaluations from last year and say, well, based on last year, they were neck and neck end of season, but it looks like Logan was maybe improving. Well, mid-season Quinn was at a 62. So maybe Quinn actually improved more throughout the year. And so really has started to focus in on volleyball as their main sport. So you can do a lot with this dashboard. You can also dig into the actual scores if you want to see end of season, how was so and so's attitude, or they're really, we just need somebody who can block on this team. Great, go click on block and you'll see those exact scores. So there's a lot you can do with the data in there. And once, of course, those evaluations are done, you're able to go into send emails and you can easily select all of your players if feedback reports are done for everybody. Create the message, select an email template saying feedback reports are ready. And this would say, hey, Alex. So this would go to each of these athletes individually. They would not see anybody else's scores, anybody else's notes from the coach. They wouldn't even see that anybody else got this email. It would go one-to-one to that player, say, hey, Alex, we're excited to inform you that your in-season evaluation report is ready. Click below to view. They click on that link and it brings them directly into their report. So you have the player's name, the organization name, and your organization logo at the top. End of season evaluations. If they wanted to be able to look between the two, they could click here and go from end of season to mid season or beginning of season to mid season to see how they improved or didn't improve. And then down here, of course, are those notes from the coach. Passing, Ashley was a 3.4 out of 5. Coach notes from Coach Mallory, tendency to be flat on the heels, but her overall passing form looks great. You can read through all that here, of course, and you do have the option to include what the average was for their player pool, so the average on their team, as well as how they ranked compared to their teammates. Those are optional things to include. You don't need to by any means, but we do see more and more people using that, as especially as you get up in age and in competitiveness. The more competitive the team, the higher the age, the more likely people are to share the really transparent data because the player can handle it. The player realizes maybe I'm not the best player, or maybe I want to be the best player. So I want to know if I should be working on one of these skills specifically. We'll leave it at that for the Team Genius demo. If there's any questions on that, please feel free to reach out. And yeah, now we'll jump back into the next slide of what to do with in-season evaluation data. This is a big one, right? I mean, two trains of thought typically. Skelly, what would you say on the two different things people do with this data?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I see when clubs are getting, into this is a lot of times they'll collect the data and maybe keep it internally. Kind of mentioned earlier, so have a couple times a year where you evaluate the athletes, looking at different skill sets and criteria that you evaluate them on. And you can see their year-over-year development. You can look at their scores, doing a more holistic approach of maybe putting them on teams for next season. So use that data, rolling it into the team placement for next year. What I really like to see is, sharing it. So you can share these reports via our email tool with parents and families. You can, so the kids can see, what the feedback is. You can have them sent out where the coach's name's on there. And kids, there's a lot of viewing that goes on with that. I had kind of anecdotally, but I had an organization that sent these out to all their kids. And there's a way that you can see like how many times the report's viewed and opened. And one of the kids had looked at their report 100 times. And it might be that they're sending out the report to their grandparents and friends and those kind of things. But it just shows like, how much these things are viewed if you choose to send them out. There's a lot of clubs that I definitely work with that are, scared to send reports, feedback, especially if it's like, tryout data or those kind of things, which is fine. I mean, there's clubs that are starting to share that too, to be more, more friendly to what they're doing for their evaluation process for tryouts. But for in season, I think it's a really good time to share like, areas of feedback and areas that the kids can improve. And sharing it with the kids and families, and some of them will even do less of a scored criteria and more of a contextual, typed out half paragraph of details on how the kids are doing on their setting and their passing and their serving and their attacking. Or they could also have things in there that are a little bit more quantitative data. So it might show like how the kids are doing at their vertical height, or how they're doing in some of their sprint drills, or how they're doing it like maybe some of their serves or these kind of things. And those kind of data points you can really, lock in and see how kids are improving and getting better or not. But yeah, I definitely see a lot of different ways these are used. I think it's great for clubs to have them internally and see, as coaches, one against the next, how they're scoring players and how the kids are improving. And I think it's even better when we share these reports out so kids get to see them. And again, so that the parents and families can see how the kids are doing and how they can help them improve.
Now we want to dive into some of the in-season evaluation trends. Some of those are written out here. If anybody has anything to add, we'd love to see this in the chat, or any specific questions on any of these that you're seeing on the screen. First one, as we mentioned, AI is such a huge trend right now, and it's far, far, far from perfect. And it's never going to be able to give the perfect comment or perfect feedback to an athlete, at least not for the short term that we see. And so dropping in or having the coaches write out their own comment, drop that comment into an AI tool. It could be ChatGPT, it could be Gemini, it could be Claude, whatever AI tool you're using, and just having that expand a little bit more on it, making it more professional. A lot of these coaches, they don't have a ton of time to complete these in-season evaluations, but you can prompt AI to provide some insights on how to improve on the comments that or the feedback that you do have for the player. So that's a huge trend we're starting to see. And I promise that feature does work 99% of the time on the app. And so that's something that we're starting to implement within Team Genius. Super exciting, and definitely a big trend that we're seeing, not just in comments, but across the whole evaluation process. The other big one that we will say is we're starting to see more and more clubs capture measurable and objective data points, things like vertical, pro agility, any sort of anything that you can use to compare players to other players across the country. Data like this is becoming more and more available as it does become more common. So you can have an athlete on the West Coast compare themselves to a player on the East Coast, or take a smaller volleyball market. I know we work with some people up in Saskatchewan, Canada. Imagine them being able to see how they compare to an athlete in a much bigger market in Canada, like British Columbia, around the Vancouver area, right? That's impossible with 0 to 5 scales that are completely subjective from your coach. Like that best player will get a lot of fives because they're the best player on their team or the best player in their club. But if it's quantitative, if their vertical is 26 inches, They can look to see, hey, I'm 14 years old. I have a 26-inch vertical. How does that compare to a kid my age in a bigger market or on the national team or on a certain regional team? So the more measurable, objective, and accurate tests that you can do for your athletes, the better, because that's going to help them in the recruiting process. It's also very easy to track development that way. One of the difficult parts about using even an evaluation tool, but subjective scores, uh, is if you get a zero, let's say you get a 4 out of 5 in hitting this year from your coach, next year you might get a 3 out of 5. That doesn't mean you didn't get better, but it just means that that coach you had decided to score you differently based on your peers. So maybe you got worse relative to your peers, but you did get better overall. Or maybe your coach is just a little bit harder on you this year, right? Like there's just so much value to the objective data points. And that's why we're starting to see a trend of volleyball combines and measurable tests being done, even especially at that age 14 and up, is really where a lot of that becomes more and more valuable. So if you can implement any objective tests during your in-season evaluations or at an event where you are doing testing on your players, we highly, highly, highly recommend that. It's good for a number of reasons. The other one I mentioned earlier is final paycheck. Wait, if you do pay your coaches, have them complete their end of season evaluations. And as soon as they do that, and you confirm that they did finish the end of season evaluation, then send their final paycheck. Or volunteer coaches, get them a $20 gift card as soon as they finish their final end of season evaluation. That's an easy way to reward the coaches who are doing it, and also just make sure that they're getting it done in an efficient manner. And I alluded to this one too, the in-person events, combines. I mentioned this earlier, but COVID, I think, was really hard on uh, athletes' social lives. And a lot of these athletes who are now in high school had a time in middle school or elementary school where they weren't able to see their friends. And technology is absolutely more and more widely used for events, but nothing beats an in-person event. Athletes still love going out and hanging out with their friends, competing with other athletes, and doing all of that in person. One of the things that we've worked on with some of our users is creating a combine or event prep checklist. Typically, we share our trial prep checklist, but this is, I think, the next best thing, the next biggest thing for a lot of our users is looking at hosting your own event. What this can do for your club, it's a huge number of things. But first of all, if you're trying to attract local talent, and if you host an event that's going to give them quantitative, measurable data that they can see how they compare to athletes across the country, or at least see how they compare to athletes in their city, that's a huge attractor. That's an easy way for you to get your club name in front of some of the top talent in the area. Also, if for your players that currently play with you, if your club is doing that, is going above and beyond to get them data on how they're developing year after year, that's going to make them just believe in your club and what you do more and more. You're going to see an increase in player retention. The quantitative player data, I've talked about that enough. I mean, there is so much you can do with quantitative data between comparisons, normative data, we like to call it. Also, looking at trends. Where am I improving? Where am I not? Where did I train this off season, and why did I develop so much faster than previous years? Some of that might have been just growth and puberty for those high school kids. Others, maybe they've already hit that peak growth and they are just trying to figure out how they get to the next level. Uh, all of that can be helped by quantitative data. The enhanced experience, there's something to be said about the combine experience. Like I said earlier, have a hockey background, and I have a couple brothers who went off to play Division I college. And when they got there, they had never gone through these tests that the colleges were running on them. Force plates being one of them. They got there and they're like, "What the heck is this thing? I'm supposed to stand on this plate and jump." They had no idea what they were doing. if you at the high school level can start to train your players on how to go through those tests or just get them in front of it, that's the experience that they're looking for, especially those players who are trying to get to the college level. And if you can bring them the best of the best technology, the most advanced tests that you're able to do at a combine like that, that's just going to prepare them for the next level more and more. A lot of that data can be used for development. If you talk to anybody with a physiology degree, they'll tell you that the more data you have, the more you can gear your training around your player, around your athlete. There are certain things that some players don't need to work on and others that they should spend more time on. The data helps you identify those areas. The last one I'll mention is the recruiting opportunities. We've had organizations come into our sister company, Human Powered Health, their athlete testing lab, and they leave with a report on all of the data from their testing, and they've sent that to Division One coaches. And just this last month, we had one of the players who did that. They got an offer from the coach within a week later because that coach passed the data along to their physiologist on their team, their trainer, and the trainer said, this player is ready for college already, and they're a junior in high school. So that is absolutely all this data is something that helps with the recruiting potential. And if nothing else, it shows the coach at the college level that these athletes are serious about their development. They're going above and beyond to these events to make sure they are developing and they're a step ahead of everybody else at this level. We'll plan to send out the full combine prep checklist as well. I'll give you a sneak peek at that. Looks something like this. So 1 to 3 months in advance, you're going to want to establish your combine format, decide on all the logistics, combine metrics. You want to, of course, reserve your courts, just so you can make sure you have enough time, enough bandwidth. You want to probably at that point decide on what the bandwidth is, what your capacity is for players. Typically, we're seeing people post combines if they can get more than 100 or 100 or more athletes to that event. Anything less than that, it just gets a little bit too expensive. But it also depends on what kind of testing, what kind of coaching staff you need there. So these are all things we can help with as well if you want to reach out with questions on an event. And then, of course, you got to open up athlete registration. You want them to have enough time to register, find this first, think about it, then register. So typically, you want that done at least a month in advance, and then prepare and send communication to parents. And of course, you all have your lists of people that you can promote this to already, but there's also something to be said about posting on social media, maybe boosting that post, trying to get this in front of other athletes in your area. 6 to 8 weeks in advance, you want to launch any marketing campaigns, confirm sponsor activations. This is a great time to have like a gift bag for anybody who attends. And in that gift bag, you can have any sort of deals from local sponsors. You could try to find partnerships. We have some of these relationships as well that we're able to leverage if you are hosting a combine with Team Genius. And then ordering gear and supplies, of course, is something you need to do. And the last couple steps, you need to obtain, sorry, not last couple, we've got more, obtain equipment and recruit evaluators and volunteers. Gabe Skelly is great at this. Gabe's involved in a ton of community events, and he always mentions that for your volunteers, try to have snacks and beverages there and just make sure that they're having a good time and communicate that too when you're trying to recruit those volunteers because that does make a difference. They don't want to just come help with something where they're not going to be appreciated. Make sure that they know they will be. There's a lot of gratitude around those who are helping with this sort of event. Week of the combine, you got to train your evaluators. Of course, if they're using TeamGenius to capture the data, you want to assign volunteers to specific tasks, train your volunteers, set up evaluation software and scoring sheets. That's something we help with just as it is. We do that all the time. Finalize player registration. So you got to figure out when the combine registration date is closing. That way you have enough time to get players imported and just ready to go. And the day of the combine, you want to set up the check-in areas. Most likely, athletes will still need to receive numbers at the check-in desk just like a tryout. So this event type of thing is more like a tryout, honestly, than an in-season evaluation in a lot of ways. But it also gets you a lot of the same data that you can capture in season. Then you need to do some setup for the different volunteer and evaluator areas. We always recommend capturing media, some sort of video or get pictures of the events so that you can use those to market your future events. So that first year, it's tough. There's not a ton of content you do have on it. But then the second year becomes so much easier because you do have video to use for promo for the next year's event. Second, next to monitor data sync. So you want to make sure you just kind of check in on that data as it's happening. And then you can address the parents and athletes afterwards saying, thanks for coming. If you don't play with the club, we'd love to have you come to tryouts this year. Here's some information on your tryout. So it's another time to connect with local talent and just promote your club and how much you are investing in the development of your athletes. That combine is the perfect example of that. And the last few, validating data and sending reports, you want to make sure you get that data to the athletes within 48 hours. Typically, you want to get a highlight reel of the event out to social media, out to your email list, all of that stuff, and then talking about what went well and what you can do better next time. And then you do want to involve your evaluators, volunteers, athletes, and parents in that feedback process. So don't just rely on your directors to say, I think it went really well. We're a little bit biased a lot of times when we say that because we didn't see everything that was going on. Was the bathroom prepared for 100 people, right? That's a small thing that a lot of people don't think about until they actually go through the event. Was there enough? Did we have water somewhere for athletes who needed it that wasn't super far away? We don't want them running down the hall to a drinking fountain or something. We want to make sure that we have the water station somewhere. So there's a lot of different parts, a lot of moving parts to an event. And so you want to get feedback from everybody who was involved. And a lot of those people, athletes, parents, volunteers, whoever it was, they'll have good ideas that maybe you didn't think about. And most likely they've been to a similar event where maybe they saw something that you didn't do that could make your next year's event much better. So, the last thing we wanted to go through here was just questions. We get these three questions very, very frequently on in-season evaluations. Scaly, I'll let you handle this one if you want to jump in.
Yeah. So we got, kind of going with a poll. So we do have it looks like a lot of our 86% of the people that joined on here do in-season evaluations to some degree. And then, so what I would say is how often to do them, right? I'd say, at least once a season. If you want to do say hyper competitive, you might do them monthly. If you've got a couple month-long season, kind of depends upon, where you guys are playing and what kind of a organization you're part of. But if you have a couple different data points over the year, I think it makes it easier to compare and give good feedback to the players and the parents. Most common criteria that I see: the serving, passing, attacking, setting, defense, hitting, serve, receive. One of the things I see too in there is the kind of more standard criteria too of on some of these things you'll do, areas of improvement and areas that players have been improving on within any of those different skill sets. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways that people do the criteria, but we have some templates to set up in TeamGenius. We can share those with you around these criteria to help set up your in-season evaluations. Malinsky talked a little bit about how you get coaches to complete the in-season evaluations. We have a dashboard set up in TeamGenius where if you assign them to coaches, you as an administrator can see if they've done them or not, which is kind of nice. Sometimes offering a little bonus or giving the coaches some easy way to feel better about doing them if they don't feel like they really want to do them because it's a time crunch. We have some AI tools that we've got built in and those kind of things. So there's a lot of ways that you can help your coaches with them. And some organizations, it's just a kind of expectation of coaching within the organization. So yeah, there's a lot of different options there with getting your coaches and how to get to do these. I think when I started doing in-season evaluations with clubs, 5, 6 years ago, it was less common, but I think the more common these get, the more coaches get used to giving feedback. And just giving your coaches the time to do them too. That's a big thing. So like if you imagine a coach is working with 30 athletes, think of them, giving them 5 or 10 minutes if they're a paid coach to do that and complete the evaluations for the in season for each set. And if they're volunteers, say, hey, we're going to have a get together where, you guys get your list of players and we're going to have pizza as coaches and we're just going to, sit and have pizza and you guys can work on the reports or something, facilitate the coaches doing that feedback. We had a question that came in that's really good too, from one of the people that's on here today. It was how are we managing, evaluator bias consistency across evaluations? Usually it's going to be one of the big things is going to be, making sure that the evaluators and coaches know, their athletes, which they probably do. And you can have head coaches and assistant coaches give feedback together, where if you're scoring the athletes, you can even set a different weight on how a head coach versus assistant coach, their score affects the player. And then looking at any feedback that's given, having your coaches say, know what's going to be appropriate for the age level. And then also, that comes into knowing their players. If you want to, if you're using our system, you can look at the feedback that goes out before you send it to players and families. So just kind of screening it for appropriate language and things that, that they're going to be appropriate for that age level of athletes. We also got here how to communicate and share the comments with evaluators when clubs are trying to be more conscious of what mental well-being, and evaluators can do player self-preparation and confidence. I would say, there's definitely a big thing in the mental well-being of athletes. That's where I think sometimes sharing these in-season evaluations in person can be big, emailing them out, but maybe if you have time, having a one-to-one meeting, just like teachers have with kids in school, right? With your coaches and the kids, going over the things. And everything you can approach in a positive light. Like even if the kid's like really bad at something, right? You can always look at like that they're improving or the things they need to improve on in a way that isn't so negative, right? There's ways that we can approach things when we're doing these feedback reports and in season with kids where you don't want to just say, hey, you're horrible at this. You can say, hey, maybe we know you're getting better at this, or these things you improve, and phrase them in a positive way and give constructive ways to get better, versus just saying, hey, you're bad at this, giving a low score and nothing else. So I think the way that you approach these is going to be maybe just more thoughtful than giving feedback that's just, hard and something that doesn't have ways to improve it. Just like you would if you were, like you said, if you're a teacher or if you've got employees and you're giving them a review, like you got to give them some ways to improve that and not just give negative feedback. So it's going to be, I would say I would generally phrase more in-season evaluation feedback in a positive light or kind of a neutral light with ways that they can improve versus just giving negative feedback. Unless it's like, the kid's running on the field and needs to stop spitting at other players or something, it's like, no, stop doing that, but yeah, that's what I would say on those. But just, be constructive with it. Start rolling out the feedback. If you're an organization that's worried about sending feedback and sharing it, you can always start with a certain age set, maybe older kids to start out with. And I think there's something too, is if you meet with kids even before your season in doing this feedback, having them set some priorities that they want to get better at. With my kids and some of their sports, they do that where before the seasons, the kids go over areas they want to improve in, areas they already know they're strong in, and then you can help track that. So if you're going to do something in that depth where the players are also wanting to track something, maybe it's every 2 weeks, which does lead into more coach time. But then, you just have to figure out as a club, maybe you need to bring on more coaches. But in doing that, you're bettering your whole program because you're really helping those athletes develop as not just players, but as individuals too. So yeah, there's a lot in that.
Yeah, really good questions and content in this poll as well. So we'll maybe add some insights into the follow-up email. Brianna, anything that you're seeing on the in-season evaluation side, or any tips, anything that you think might be worth adding for those who are listening today?
I think you guys provided a lot of detail and a lot of guidance, but just something I consistently hear is a lot of clubs are trying to do something mid-season and then later in the season, especially those clubs that have the summer tryouts. They're really trying to communicate as much as possible with the kids towards the end of the season to give them that reassurance and just honesty, right? And obviously putting it in the light where it is positive for that athlete, so they're in a good mental space for where they lie. But I think just open, honest communication, providing data and all these tools is super helpful.
Hmm. Yeah, and not overcomplicating it too, I think is a huge thing. When people start doing in-season evals, they think, oh, I can, add these 20 criteria and here the coaches will love it. The feedback is going to be great to the players, the coaches. It's just that's not the reality we live in, unfortunately. Most of these coaches are busy with practice planning and they have enough going on at home or in their day job that make it as simple as possible. Some people, it's literally they have the coaches evaluate on one or two criteria. That way, there's a box for comments. You can add whatever comments you want to in that box. Add a strength and a weakness or an opportunity area in there. And don't overcomplicate it. Make it as easy as possible on your coaches. We do have the AVCA event coming up. We will be at booth 205 for any of you in attendance. That's going to be, yeah, I mean, it's coming up in a couple weeks here. So, Brianna, you all will be in attendance as well. Is that right?
We are, I want to say we're like 1022 or by court two. But yes, we're super excited and to see you all there as well.
Awesome. I know Skelly and Zach will be at this one too. Skelly, you want to tell them about what we'll be doing at the Team Genius booth?
Yeah, well, I mean, number one, we're going to ask everybody about the best barbecue in KC. I've never been
Yeah.
there, but Zach went to school there, so I'm very excited to try barbecue all over the place. We're going to be hosting some runs too in the morning, so if anybody wants to come run with us, like 3 to 5 miles before the conventions kick off early in the morning to get your cardio cranking. But we're going to have some demos, and a leaderboard where you can test your grip strength, and then as well as your vertical jump with Hawking Dynamics is one of our partners, so we'll have the jumps on their force plates to show your vertical and some of the counter jump forces you put out, and then their newest grip strength measure. I actually got to test that in our lab this week, and it outputs in newtons, and I was just shy of 700 newtons on my right hand grip. I don't know how that compares to anybody, but it'll be exciting to see all the coaches and people come by and test their grip strength, and we'll throw you up on the leaderboard to see who the best people are and maybe worst. And we'll share a nice report with you. And I think there's going to be a gift card drawing at the end of the conventions for the tops on the leaderboard there. So
It's awesome. I need to join that run.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice to get a run in the mornings before the conventions to get your cardio cranked up.
Yeah, it definitely is a good way to start the day. Those are long days, but it's nice to have that first half an hour to an hour just focused on, breathing and the basics before getting into the complicated conversations and sessions. So well, I know we're about up on time here, so we'll end it there. If anybody does have any lingering questions, feel free to email those to us. Always happy to talk all things evaluations on the Team Genius side, and Brianna and the JVA are a great resource for anything, anything at all in the volleyball world. So, again, keep us posted if you're going to be at that upcoming convention. We'd love to see you there, and we'll plan to send recording, slide deck that combine prep checklist, all of that stuff in an email later today. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you all again for joining. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Guys, take care. Have
So
a good
everybody
night.